was just saying I'm going to remember to record this time because I forgot last time. And I'll go over the basic idea again. We're discussing position, rate, race, and threats, PRAT, which is brought up in Chris Bray's book, but it's not really presented in what I would consider a useful form. And so what I'm presenting is something that is very usable. It's I think it's fairly easy to understand. It's applying it is not necessarily easy. It requires a lot of practice. But if you can do this, I think the idea of what I'm trying to do is to give you information that's easy enough and accessible enough to take you from, a novice to at least an intermediate. And in this case, if you can apply this effectively and accurately, you'll be very competitive, as good as pretty much anyone in terms of cue play. That may be a bit much, but if you practice enough, I suppose you would be. And this, what I'm teaching, is developed really by David Presser, who is one of the top cube experts amongst the top players. So, and some of this is really, I find quite fascinating. So let me go over the basics again, just to introduce it for anyone who's not there, or if someone's looking at a recording and didn't get one of the first rounds. So we're doing position, race, and threats, and we're going to assign a number to position, race, and threats. And we're also, the fourth one, even though it doesn't get a letter in the PRAT, is the gammon potential. And so we're going to assign a value to our position. And essentially, if our value is 2 or more, we're going to double. And if it's 3 or more, it's a double and a pass. So 2 to 3 is a double and a take. 3 or more is a double and a pass. Below 2 is a no double. And so the first step is to place value on the points. And let me see if I can mark these off. There we are. I don't know what's in there. So if we have the 5 point, we're going to get a value of 0.75. The 4 point is worth 0.4. I'm sorry, 0.5. And the 3 is 0.3, 0.2, for the 2 point, and 0.1. This looks like a 2, but it's, yeah. So, and then we're going to add those up. And again, it's the relative strength of the two values as our board compared to our opponent's board. So in this case, we have the 5 point, and that's it. Our opponent has the 5 point. We're going to say that we don't have any board. We're going to get 0 for board in terms of the number counting. Now we're going to cap these at 1. So if you had the 5 and the 4 point, we would get 0.75. But if our opponent didn't have any value to his board, we would cap it at 1 in terms of this counting system. Okay, so the next step, that's position, and that's fairly simple to do. Race is very simple to do. We're going to look at the pip count, and if we're up by 16, we're going to give that a 1. And if we're up by less than 16, we'll give it a fraction. So 8 would be 1/2. And if we're behind, we get 0. So in this case, we're at, we're up 7. So that's just under a half. So if you counted a half, that's fine. The numbers, like when we say this 0.75, the 0.05 part of it doesn't make that much difference. It's kind of a general number, but so don't need to worry too much about it. And when we do fractions, if we have 15/16, we can count it as 1 and don't really need to worry about it as 0.92 or something like that. Now, the third and fourth pieces of this are gammon potential and threats. Those are much less objective, and you kind of have to get a sense of it through practicing, because there are many different threats that you can consider. And the gammon potential also is a bit trickier, but again, if you practice it and look at the gammon percentages and things like that, you sort of get an idea, and usually it's close enough. Now, for threats, we're going to value between 0 and 1. A gammon potential, in most cases, we're going to value between 0 and 0.5. There are some rare cases, I don't know that we'll get into them now, where you might give it a value of more, where your gammons are just overwhelming that you have to take that into account. So let's look at we'll look at this position. Get rid of this. Oh, now we've gone over, I've done 2 sessions on this. The first was kind of a general session with kind of easy positions just to introduce it. Last time we went over some opening doubles, double 5s, double 4s, double 3s, and so on. And just to review it. And so this time, I'd like to go over, well, I'll spend this session and next session going over situations where we don't have one of the, where we have 0 for one of the components. So in this case, we have our board is 0, our board count is 0 because we have the same board as our opponent, it's black. And so we're going to look at situations where we still have a cube or close to a cube, even though we don't have a board advantage. Now, let me just add, what happens to a lot of people is they're playing along, they're rolling, they're moving, and everything looks good, and then they all of a sudden realize they have a tremendous advantage, and they double, and it's a drop. So, which is fine, but what you'd really like to do is double and have your opponent take it and then get 2 points, or better yet, get a gammon and get 4 points. So the way that I'm thinking about this as we start the initial game is that, okay, if I get the 5 point and my opponent doesn't, okay, I know I'm up 0.75. I should be looking at the count now and seeing if I've got, if I'm getting close to that 2.0 factor to give me a chance to double, and also looking at threats and things like that. So that way you can get you want to get the double right at the right time to get the double, and not when it's too good, or not, so that your opponent is still not good enough that your opponent won't pass it, because again, you want the 2 points, or better yet, the 4, and we often miss that. Okay, so here today's we're going to look at a bunch of positions where we don't have a board advantage over our opponent, and these are tricky because it forces us to focus on mostly threats. I think because the pip count is easy, but it's the threats and gamma potential that are trickier. And you have to get a sense of them, otherwise you don't get, you don't get a sense of how valued it is and important it is. So here we've got board 0.75 versus our opponent's 0.75. Our net is 0 in our counting system. Race, we got, say, a half, because we're up 7 pips, so that's good. But threats, how are we in threats? What kind of threats can you see here?
Make the 4 point, get another checker back.
Yeah, well, yeah, anytime we got a loose checker there, we can at least hit it and send it back and put it on the bar.
6 point, 7 point.
Yeah, that's true, we could also make that, and that gives us a prime. That's part of the threats. I was going to say that when you have three builders pointing at here, we've got at least 9 rolls that hit the 4 point and make the 4 point. And if we can make the 4 point and put our opponent on the bar, you know, we're in pretty strong shape. You know, that would, just in terms of the PRAT, you know, next time we'll have a, you know, a 0.5 advantage for having the 4 point versus the opponent not. So that, you know, that's one, but there are others as well. We got a loose checker here. Now, obviously, well, probably if we get to 2, we're going to hit here. But you know, maybe if we get a 2-5 or a 2-6 that we can't point on it, maybe we'll hit 2 and come out. But that, you know, that's another, you know, another threat, putting our opponent, you know, a 4th checker behind our blockade here. So,
But how are you allowing for the duplication of 2s? I mean,
yes, that's true. But yeah, you do have the duplications of 2s, but keep in mind with threats, we're not looking at just the next roll. So, you know, if we get, you know, 4-2, we're going to make a 4 point. But if our opponent dances, we can hit him, and there's another checker, you know, on the bar. So, you know, even though that, you know, they are duplicated, it has value. You know, again, not as much if this were a, you know, a 3. So where, if, you know, if the lot was on the 21 point, you know, that would be a stronger position. Now 3s, well, actually 3s are duplicated as well. 2 3s and 4. So, but you know, it's, again, you know, ideally, if you know, if we're lucky, we're going to point on the 4 point, black will dance, and we'll pick up this extra checker, you know, eventually, even if it's on next roll, even or the roll afterwards. So, you know, it's part of the threats. It's also part of the gammon potential. You know, if this checker is here, you know, there's a sequence where we'll pick up this checker. If this checker is here, well, we're not, you know, it's not likely to pick up another checker. You know, we still might be able to, but, you know, it's a lot easier to pick off this one when he's there. So, but again, back to the PRAT, you know, what do we think the threats are here? If you have to give it a value. Well, okay, then I'll tell you, this is a full 1. You've got 9 rolls that point, you get rolls that hit. You've got, if you can't point on the 4 and you can't hit, you got rolls that will make the 3 or the 2 point. I don't know that there are any bad rolls here. But anyway, so and then black isn't on the bar now, but if we hit him, he'll go on the bar. A very strong position. Part of the threats too, when you're trying to evaluate them, is checkers in the zone. Karen pointed this out last time. You have 10 or more checkers in the zone, you have a pretty strong position for attacking. And again, that's true, but as long as black doesn't have the anchor. So if black is here, it's a different story. Your threats aren't nearly as great. Okay, so now what about gammon potential? Can you see the gammon potential here and take a guess as maybe what the value might be?
Can you just remind me of the range?
Well, we're gonna pick a range for 0 and 0.5, 0.5, and translate it. You know, it's roughly a 0.1 for each. It's a little less than 0.1% gammon chance. So a 10% gammon would be probably a little over 0.1. 50% gammons would be, actually we'd probably go higher, the 0.5, but you know, so
0.25.
0.25, okay. Yeah, it's probably a little bit higher than that because of this blot in here. So, okay, so I would give this a 0.4, 0.5 gallon
Wow.
potential. So, again, the question here is, do we cube or not? We don't have board, so, we only have half a race. But are the threats here enough? We have one for threats. That's 1.5. Do we have enough gammon potential to boost it to a double? And, at 0.3, 0.4, it may be. So what does XG say? It is a double. And so, the threats in the gamma potential offset the fact that we don't really have that. We don't have the better board, and we only have a small racing lead. So again, this is kind of the reason I'm looking at these is to show you how we kind of stretch things out a little bit, because when you first start out and you look and you go through the process, you might not see you might underestimate the threats here. In fact, so we limit these to 1, 0 to 1. Another way to look at it, well, this might be a little more than 1 on threats, just because there's so many of them. If we look at the gamma potential 0.23, that's about a 0.3. So,
what about your opponent's gammons, which aren't entirely negligible?
Yeah, well, we have to worry about those too, but generally not so much. I mean, we're on roll here, and our opponent is really vulnerable, and so you might that gets tricky if you're you'll there are certain situations which are really volatile, which means you'll both have high gamma potential, and the tricky part about those is that if you get the good roll, for instance, when you're both on the bar or something like that, and the first one that comes in is in really good shape, it's often right to double, because if you come in, you lose your market. So here we're not really worried so much about our opponent's gamma potential in terms of doubling here. We're worried about getting in before we lose our market, and then we can attack.
Gary,
Yeah.
I hate to play a game where my opponent has 4 or 5 checkers back. I mean, you would think you're in big time win position, but I find that you're not.
Yeah.
So like if you rolled a 2 here, are you better off? I mean, if you hit the 22, you kill race, but then you put 4 checkers back, and you have, you're in a tough spot.
Yeah. Well, those are tricky. Well, yeah, when you say you get 4 checkers back and you're tough spot, not really. I think your opponent can get a back game, and if they get a back game, then they have a decent chance. But the chances of them winning from the back game with 4 checkers back aren't that great, and there are a lot of gammons. And what happens is that you remember and feel the pain, I say, more strongly when you've lost a back game. When your opponent gets that late hit and you lose. But most of the time you're going to win, and as much as you lose, you're also going to win and get the gammon. So there's a rule about back games in terms of playing them, is that if your choice is to play a back game or not, try not to play the back game. That's the other side. So don't be afraid of putting your opponent into a back game. You do get that late hit, and you do lose more than you think, but that's more of a situation of you're feeling the pain more than you know, the cost of it.
If-
Cost of the score.
If the checker on 19 was on made the point on the black point,
Here,
no, down below. Yeah, there.
this one.
No, let's see, I guess that's the 24, 23, 20, 21 point.
This is the 21 point.
Okay, well, okay, the 1, 2, 3, 4 point.
The numbers aren't showing up.
Okay, do the
So,
4
Who
point.
has this point?
Black?
Okay, like this.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so now, you know, would there be times that you would not want to hit? And let's say you rolled a 2, something.
Well, okay, this is, yeah, we're a little bit off topic here, but if I rolled a 2, I would hit.
Okay, all right, that
and-
tells me.
Put them back, yeah. That's a different, that's, you know, that's playing a back game, but yeah, hit because black is threatening to prime you here. And so you don't want to be primed.
Okay,
Much
Got
better
it.
to put them back. Okay, so
Thank
let's
you.
go on to another couple of positions. And let's see if we can evaluate them. So what do we got here? Well, we don't have a board, neither does opponents, so there's no board. We have a huge race lead, 27 pips. So we get 1 for that. What about threats? Well, black is on the bar. What else would we look at for threats here?
you can hit the 15.
Yep.
You
There's a
can
blot
make,
here.
you can make the 7 point or 5 point.
Yeah, well, look, we've got builders here, 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 and here, 4 builders to make the 5 or the 4. And then, you know, 6-4 makes the 2, or 5-4, 6-5 makes the 2, puts them back on the bar again. Yeah, so threats, you know, you need to give this a 1 for threats. Again, because black is on the bar and we've got 10 in the zone. Black has no, you know, nothing to keep us back. We can just fire away. And this extra blot. Gamma potential. Well, hopefully we can see the gamma potential whenever you have, you know, black on the bar and 10 in the zone, you've got some gamma potential. What it is isn't, you know, we've got a long way to go before we can really think of gammons because we have no inner board points, but with all the chances to make a point and all the black has around, we've certainly got some. So, you know, I would give this a 0.3 maybe. So we're at, you know, 0 for board, 1 for race, 1 for threats, 0.3 for gammons. You know, this should be a double and a take. So, and that's what it is. Now, this is a close double. Because we don't have any points in the earlier position, we had at least the 5 point with all the threats. And so, you know, our chances of building up the board were better. Black also has these deeper points, which, you know, we don't want to make. We'll make him to make the point and put him on the bar. But, you know, if it was up here, oops, why is he not moving there? You know, I think we would have more threats. Let me get this size to my screen better. So this is, you know, slightly stronger position us because we can point, we can make a point that we want and put black on the bar with the 4 rather than the 2. But again, you know, the point of this is, even though you don't have any board advantage here, we have so many advantages on the race and on threats and gamma potential that this is still, this is still a double.
I noticed that White can hit another checker with a 5, which otherwise isn't very good for him.
Yeah.
Would it be a double if, let's say, that the white checker was on the 21 instead of the white checker?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, move the white checker from from the 20 back a pip, so he wouldn't have a decent 5. No.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. The front one. Back,
yes. Now I reckon this would then not be a double because he hasn't got a good 5 now.
Yeah, it's probably going to. I don't know. It's probably going to be close, but it may just be below. It still is a double.
It still is.
Yeah. So.
I see. Okay.
5. You still have the 5 still hits off the 2 and the ace. So. It's not.
Okay.
Obviously the 5. If you just got a 5, 5-1, 5-2, or something like that, you would hit out here, and it would be better. But the main action here is getting the board together. More so, I think, than putting the extra checker back.
Right.
Okay. Let's look at another one. And let's see what we think of this one. This is an interesting one because here, not only do we not have board, but black has the better board. So, we got a 0.2 here versus the opponent's 0.2, but our opponent has the 5 points. So it's a, we still count that as 0, but here black has the better board. Now race, we still have a full 1 for race. We're way up in the race. Threats, well, blot here, even though it's not direct. Checker on the bar, blot here. And here, this one is not as significant, but it still may come into, double 5s or double 6s. That can be handy, or, 6-5. So black has 4 blots around. Look at the checkers in the zone. We've got 13 checkers in the zone. So all that is a way of saying our threats are pretty high. And, when our threats like this type are high, also the gammon potential is pretty high. So we're looking here at 0 for board, 1 for race, 1 for threats, maybe 0.3 for gammon potential. So we're at 2.3. And this is a double. And to take, keep in mind that we're focused. I'm focused on the cube aspect of it. On where we have the advantage, and we want to decide whether the cube or not. But we also have to be looking at it from the other side, and that we may be in the opposite situation. We need to know whether we can take or not. And so. And these can be tricky. Sometimes you can scare yourself into not taking when, if you go through systematically and analyze it, it's not, you're not in such bad shape. Let's look at this position 1 roll later. Okay, so this is basically the same position. We hit here, we did not make a point when we came out from the back. What about this one? Well, let's see. The race, we're up even farther than the race.
That is much greater.
I'm sorry, Les?
I would say the threat is tremendous.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we still have, in terms of threats, now we have a 2 to hit here. We don't have this one to hit. We already hit this one, so there's only 2 blots. We still have 13 checkers in the zone. One thing I didn't mention before is that, back when we were here, we had to escape these checkers, which, shouldn't be hard, but sometimes it is. Now we've loosened up. And now we don't have a problem escaping the checkers. But
I'm just wondering if it's too good to double.
well, let's
we-
go through the analysis. Let's let me get my mouse over here.
Mhm.
So we don't have board, 0 for that. We have race, 1 for that. Threats. We still have a lot of threats. Are they 1? Well, we don't have the checker on the bar, and that's a really key feature. We don't have the checker on the bar. We don't have that extra checker blot here because we already hit it and he came in. And we don't have this checker here. Now we have an anchor. So, our threats are really, they're not stronger. There are a lot of threats, but they aren't actually as strong as they were before. Again, we have the checkers in the zone, but we don't have that checker on the bar. And we don't have, and there's now an anchor here. So there were 4 blots before, and now there are just 2. Gammon potential. So do you think the gammon potential went up or down? Well, remember we had 4 blots before. Now black has an anchor. And, it's only the ace-point anchor, which is not, not the best anchor, but it is an anchor. So the gammon potential has gone down here. And so here, are we, do we even get to the double from here? We're close, certainly with race, threats. I might give this a 1. I'm probably not a full 1. So this one is actually not a double now.
I would say.
So here again, this gets a little bit, these are the kind of things you have to look at, and it's a little bit tricky because here, well, one of the things that happens when, we don't have board, but our threats, because black has the better board, we can't hit here, we can't hit as freely as we would have if black did not have a board. So that sort of cuts back into our threats a little bit. If black didn't have the 5-point, say, then we could pretty much hit at will, hit loose, without really having to worry about it too much. But black having the 5-point and actually the rest of the structure is not necessarily formidable, but it's not nothing either. So in this case, we don't have a board. We don't have the board advantage. We do have threats and race, but the threats aren't enough to overcome, to push us over the edge to get us double. But it's still very close. I mean, if you double this, this is not, this is not a big error. The gammons, if you remember before the gammon for the prior move situation, the gammons were about 31%, something like that, and which is, probably a good 0.3, 0.4 for gammon potential. Here we're at 24. That's a 0.2, 0.3 range. Still pretty good gammons, but not as high as it was before in the previous position.
And if you pass, you have made a monster blunder. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Now, and here's a situation where, it's a 0.5 blunder to pass here. So here's where you'd want to go through that and say, well, okay, I've got the anchor. So the worst that can happen is an ace-point game, which is not great, but the ace-point game is 15% wins, pretty much, and white still has to get through the hurdle of this, even if I dance, it's going to take white a top while to bring in. So you know, even if he hits both blots, I should be able to bring them in and build my board further. So, okay. Let's look at, let's do one more.
Okay. Very good.
And let's see what we have here. This, so what happened here? We escaped the back checker with this maybe a 6-5, broke 2 down to 3, and hit somewhere. Black has 3 checkers. So what are we looking at? Well, board, obviously nothing for board. We don't have a board. Race, we got a good race lead, 24 pips. That's a full 1. Threats. Not much in the way of direct threats. I mean, you know, yeah, 5-3 hits or double. There's some jokers that hit. Double 5s, you know, are good. A lot of chances to make the 5 points. So, you know, but nothing, you know, nothing all that exciting as we've seen. You know, we're not going to point on black and be all that excited about it. You know, again, 5-3 would be nice, or double 3s even. But great, nothing great. So, but you know, we've got 10 checkers in the zone. We've got to get something for that. So, you know, maybe a 0.75. Gammon potential. It's still, it's, you know, still there. It's down the road. Maybe 0.2, something like that. So we're, you know, so between the race, the threats, and the gammon potential, we're almost at a double here. The question is, you know, is it enough? And, you know, the answer is no, it's not quite enough, but it's awfully close. Now, you know, previously to looking at this position, you know, most of you and probably me would not even consider doubling here. But, you know, if you go through it and look at analyze each spot and do it systematically, you know, you're in a pretty strong position here. And, you know, if we bump up the threats, like do this, you know, now the threats have probably gone to 1. I would bet this, if this isn't a double, is very close. No, it's very close. Actually, it wasn't. It's farther away. I'm surprised. The threats are much better to point here and put black on the bar. The gammons are up a little bit too. I guess the problem here is that if you don't hit, if you don't point, then black is in a much better position to make the 5 point. And if black makes the 5 point, then your threats go down dramatically. But anyway, this is still pretty close too. If you doubled this, you wouldn't be far off. All right, let me do one more after that one. That was exactly what I wanted.
Good.
So this one, what about board? Well, board is still easy. That's a 0. Race, you know, obviously 1 is probably, you know, 36 pips. That's, you know, we only limit it to 1, but, you know, sometimes you can factor in, you know, it's rarely that you give it more than 1, but in this case, maybe, you know, maybe you do want to give it more than 1 here because, you know, we're so far ahead in the race. Now threats, okay, 2 on the bar. That checker sitting there. You know, you can't get much higher, I think, in threats. Oh, how many in the zone? 10 in the zone. Yeah, this is a full 1 for threats. Gamma potential. You know, 0 to 5. This has got to be at least a 0.5. You know, with 2 on the bar, you know, that's huge for gammons. With the checker sitting there waiting to be picked off. these are high. So even so, looking at, 0 for board, but full 1 for race, full 1 for gamma potential, or full 1 for threats, 0.5 for gamma potential. The question is, hopefully you see that this is a double. And you might have missed it before because, you don't have the board, but you've got enough other stuff that it's a double. And the question really is this even a take? So now we went through it, I only come up with about a 2.5, but the race is well beyond the 1, and the threats I think are well beyond the 1. And so, it turns out that this is actually a pass. So I've introduced the reason for me going over this is to explore some other ranges of PRAT. PRAT is a tool, and it's a very effective tool. It's not precise as, say, like the Keith count, where it's a matter of counting pips, and it's usually accurate with 1 or 2 pips. There's a lot more judgment involved. We've thrown parameters up, the 0 to 1 parameters to kind of provide a structure. But when you get to sort of the edges of things, where this is edges where you don't have board, but you're still looking at a double and a pass. It's good to know what types of situations you'll get this in. If you don't have the board, but you're extremely strong in the other aspects, then it still may be a pass, and it still may be a double when you didn't look at it. I know that when I first started using PRAT, one of the weaknesses I had is I never saw positions like this. I never saw them as doubles because I didn't have a board, and I also would probably not have seen this as a pass because, well, my opponent, if you're black and your opponent doesn't have a board, why are you passing? And so, we look at situations on this to get a feel for sort of the outliers and the exceptions, and to give you, to work around to see what kind of threats and gamma potential and that sort of thing are out there. What types of things do you have to sort of stretch the basic structure to get the right cube decision? Okay, so that's it for this lesson.
Awesome.
Very
Yeah,
good,
any other questions before we turn it off? All right, I will shut off the record then.
Thanks again, Gary. Good.
Yep, you're welcome.